Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of D-Ray's Garage, where today we're going to change out the brake pads and rear rotors of this 2004 SL55 AMG. I'm sure you recognize most of the tools here in this image. The ones that really stand out are the brake pad separators, so you don't have to scratch up your rotors if you're not replacing them. And then that bottom metal there is that E18 Torx bit. Those were the two key ones. Everything else, breaker bar, ratchet, impact wrench, 17mm sockets, some disc quiet, some Loctite, and a little brake clean. Always useful in any brake job. Obviously raise your car how you ordinarily would and remove wheels. Now, first of all, remove this plug socket here from your SBC unit so the system is deactivated before you do any brake work. Can you wedge it with this maybe? Would that be better?
There we go.
You need to get that sensor off in order to get these pins out, and then we'll be punching the pins out at the top and the bottom to remove the floor pads that live on the front brakes here. Move that thing pressing against you and it will kind of fall out if you can just get it cleared of the caliper. It's trapped on the pads on this side, this near side. Pay attention to the clips under there. If you can release the tension from the clips, you're going to have a much easier time getting the pins all the way extracted from the caliper body.
Yeah, I use the soft brush first, and then if it got stubborn, I use the other one.
Really useful if you can stick the brake spreaders or the caliper spreaders in between the current brake pads and then just make sure you lever those back. That will push the pistons back into the caliper and therefore make it easier to extract those. On the front side here, you won't be able to see that in the picture, but there are shims that are inserted into the pistons, and those shims do need to be fully retracted or pushed back into the caliper if you're going to put on some nice meaty new pads. Apply a little disc brake quiet to the back of the pads here. I probably applied a little too much in this situation, but this will help reduce the squeal and squeak that can be a little annoying as your brakes and the pads age. Yeah, it just sits there until this can brace it down. We did take this opportunity to give the hardware a good clean using some nice super clean and sharp bristle brush and a little elbow grease. Easy with the ball and whatever you can get in there is fine. Yeah, looks good, Once you have the pins fully inserted over the clips and the holding brackets, it's time to put back on the sensor into the new brake pad, as well as the locking nut on the back there that you took out earlier. Here's the finished product, ready to go. Now, obviously, same applies on the rear side, except now we are replacing the entire rotor unit, which required the caliper to come off. Now, whether you move the pads or not first, that's your prerogative. We did in this case. The pins extract the same way as they were extracted on the front side, so nothing too complex there. but we really had a good old fight with these locking bolts that were on the back of this caliper. Somebody really went to town on these, and so that was quite the effort to get them off. But in the end, after a good fight, a fair fight, or maybe not, we were able to remove that caliper, get it hanging there in order to give a good pounding on the rotor to get it off of there. Obviously, you don't want to pound a rotor if you plan on reusing it for any reason. Now, the other side of this is you want to make sure your parking brake isn't on, otherwise those drums in there will be hanging onto that rotor and you'll have a tougher fight. Ask my Porsche how I know about this. Get that new rotor banged on there, make sure it's sitting flush and firm, and then we will give it some brake clean just to get off any of the factory oils and gubbins that it came with. So that process took no time at all, so time to get that caliper back on, get some Loctite prepped up on those bolts. Ideally, use new bolts. I did not, I just Loctited up the existing ones, and then torque those down to spec, and I'll list the spec here on the screen momentarily. Not really easy to get at, but certainly doable. Back to getting some of the brake quiet on the back of these discs before inserting them. Please note the ear holes through which you must insert the pins in order to secure the brake pads into the caliper at the appropriate distancing. We did not get that right the first time on the other side, so went back and fixed that later on. Oh, they go all the way through. It's kind of weird, isn't it? As long as you've retracted fully the caliper, the pistons on the back there, the brake discs should slide in, and then you just got to work around the clip here and then work through the ears on the new pads as well as through the holes on the caliper body and get it all hooked in together. Find a more appropriately sized hammer to tap in these caliper pins, but you know me, I like to do things the hard way from time to time. That's the job on the rear. Obviously, we're not going to show you both sides because you can obviously imagine it's the same, but that's the front and rear with a rotor replacement. Just got to drop the car next. Don't forget to reconnect your SBC electronics so that system can re-gauge itself and recalibrate, and you are once again road ready. If you haven't had a brake fluid flush in a period of time, you do need to use a star system or other tool to do so. I didn't need that because my fluid was flushed just a couple years ago. Be memorable, be well, and I hope to see you on another video soon.